Welcome to the Draft Deeper podcast. This is your host, Nathan Grubel. Joining me as always is my producer, Kevin Black. But Kevin, this is probably going to be my favorite show that we do until the next time these guys are on, because I have with me my best friend since high school and another of my closest friends since college on with me today to recap the NBA Finals and the bubble. And that would be Scott Amankwatia and Harford Hopson.
Thank you for having us on, man. Really do appreciate it.
No, this is like I said, it's gonna be my favorite show, and we're gonna rock out. How we feeling this morning, boys?
I'm excited. Yeah, no, I think this would be a good group. It feels like back in PA when we're around the bar watching some NBA. So I'm excited.
I just woke up an hour ago, and I'm still.
I mean that's the Fireside
That's
podcast
what it's all about.
That I want this to be. If Bill Simmons can be as successful as he is having his friends on the podcast, why can't we do the same thing over at Draft Deeper? So that's what we're gonna do. Now we're recording this on Sunday morning, October 18th, before an insane slate of football that I know we'll all be watching later, but it's not quite what we're here to talk about. Now, all season long, we have discussions about the NBA calendar year, who we're picking to win it all, the best players, awards, you name it. We're probably talking about it on one space or another, be it a Zoom call or just in our text thread. So it's only fitting I have you both on with me to put to bed the elongated 2019-2020 NBA season. I kind of wanted to start by just getting your thoughts in the open here on the league pulling off obviously the most successful restart in professional sports. How long the bubble was going, 0 positive COVID tests. That is absolutely remarkable. Even when we thought the bubble was going to be burst by our friends like Lemon Pepper Lou, we absolutely kept it down. And I again, what Adam Silver's done, what the league has done, is to be commended on the most. So Scott, I'll start with you. What were kind of your thoughts on the restart and the bubble from a logistical standpoint?
Yeah, I thought the restart was actually went really well. I thought, after that initial meeting with just kind of like the leaders, like Chris Paul, LeBron, and all that, and they started getting the ball rolling, I thought it went really, really smoothly. Besides that huge hiccup where I thought the Clippers and Lakers just weren't about the play. And the Jacob Blake stuff, killing Jacob Blake shooting. That's where it was really scared that we might just not have the ball at all anymore, and that it was popped. But other than that, from a logistical standpoint, it sounded. I think it just went as well as it possibly could, and no positive cases. So that's a good sign.
Yeah, I mean that point was definitely a moment where, like, are we actually going to have a completion of the playoffs, or are we actually going to stop play when you have the two favorited contenders by Vegas in the Clippers and the Lakers, as you pointed out, ready to just kind of stop everything and take everybody out of the bubble, especially with LeBron just walking out of a meeting like he did. I know there were some thoughts that people had that he was a little bit condescending on some of the younger players in terms of their approach and how they were trying to handle everything. I know that was certainly a little bit of a watershed moment for everybody to kind of just sit back and say, whoa, what's going on here? But yeah, Mike, what were kind of some of your thoughts about that? I know you definitely have a few.
Yeah, and we have to for the listeners, we have to. I just noticed you called me Mike, so we have to disclose that Mike is a nickname that I've adopted over many years, and this is what this man Nate knows me as. And that's fine. I don't want to.
We said this was a Fireside podcast, so if I'm sitting here like I'm a little dazed and drunk calling you Mike, you got to call me out on that one. But yes,
it's okay.
This is Harford Hopson, accomplished author, right? Mike, I was gonna you can definitely plug at the end, but Harford Hopson, accomplished author. So yes, Harford, your thoughts, please.
Yeah, we just don't want to confuse anybody. Thank you.
No.
The bubble was crazy though. I think I think the most interesting thing about it, and what was, and maybe, there will be. Speaking about me being an author, it's funny because I wonder the stories that will come out about the bubble. Like there would be so many untold stories and unspoken secrets, et cetera, that that happened like inside of that, that took place in in those hotels and whatnot. And obviously like Lemon Pepper Lou, like
That's
Scott,
right.
like you and Nate, like Scott and Nate talked about. It's like how like psychological the bubble became over as this little mini season restart happened. I think it'll go down ESPN needs to do a 30 for 30 on the bubble.
Oh, that's a guarantee. That's a wrap.
Somebody on the inside. I don't know. I mean, you're wrapped up in big in the journalists and whatnot. Like, what were the was Woj in the bubble heavy? Like, who are the journalists in the bubble?
Well, Woj kind of doesn't have to be in the bubble. Neither technically does Shams. I mean, they're gonna get their pieces no matter where they are because they just have contacts with literally everyone you can think of in the league. But some of the more hard hitting journalists that were in the bubble, obviously Rachel Nichols was there for quite a lot of it. She didn't start there for ESPN, but I mean, Mark Spears was pretty much there for a lot of it. He's another one of the heavy hitters. So there definitely were some story breakers there, not just like long form journalists. Like Mark Spears absolutely breaks some stuff. I'd have to look back at some of the other more prominent news breakers that were in the bubble. But by the time the playoffs really got rolling, a lot of the big names did head down there. I know ESPN based the jump out of there. Rachel was able to do a lot of her show out of there, but even some of the people who weren't directly in the bubble, like a Woj, who else am I thinking of here? Like a Brian Windhorst, like some of these people who are constantly breaking stories. Everyone's still telling them what's going on, and I would not be surprised in the slightest if we get like a Windhorst, like a Ramona Shelburne piece at some point of some of everything that happened inside the bubble. Especially Ramona Shelburne is so linked with LA sports.
Right.
She has to have some Clipper stuff that's going to come out at some point, like you said. Maybe instead of just a bubble 30 for 30 expose, we just need a Los Angeles Clippers expose from everything that happened that was breaking down there.
Nate, speaking of the Clippers, have you seen all the news that's come out in the past few days about how apparently Kawhi doesn't even live in LA? He lives in San Diego. He got to control his own load management. Like he could just not come to practice if he wanted to.
Oh, it's coming. Yeah. There are a lot of stories that are coming out, and a lot of the players who are there, like Lou, like Montrezl Harrell, guys who are known to be those gritty underdog type players who came together with the Clippers and kind of gave that team that get it out the mud mentality. We're going to fight no matter what. We're always going to be the underdogs, but in the end, we're going to find a way to win. And then you bring in two superstars who are going to want that preferential treatment, like a Kawhi. Now, I don't think as much Paul George, but definitely Kawhi. Obviously, we knew.
Wait, Nate.
Yeah,
you said two superstars. Who's the second one?
Oh, here we go, Kevin. That's not for the pod.
That's right. Kevin.
That's not for the pod. We're not going to slander playoff P on this pod.
Oh,
come on, Harford. Go ahead. Get your thoughts in there. I know you got some thoughts. You and Scott. Go ahead. I want to get the Paul George conversation out of the way. Go ahead.
Neither of us needs to be abusive, especially me. We've had private conversations about this. Playoff P is who he is. George Paul, he will be who he is in the playoffs. Is why when the Clippers signed him, and everybody was picking the Clippers to be title contenders. That was my only hesitation about it. I was like, he'll be great in the regular season, but I did not expect him to show up in the postseason, and he didn't again. So, I mean, Paul George is I respect this game, and I respect who he is, and I respect what he's done season after season. I respect him going head to head against LeBron in Indiana, be it with him and Roy Hibbert. Like the man, man's paid his dues, but he's paid his dues over the years. But he is who he is, and I don't even know if they my thoughts on the matter is it wasn't the Clippers situation is I wish there was I wish they could do a Shakespeare tragedy play about the Clippers restart season, because that's what it was. They were a tragedy. And I really felt bad that I felt like they made Doc the scapegoat, and I wish they hadn't. It's like if I was me, I know Colin said this, but like it would be a little bit too drastic probably. But it's like, what do you do? Do you get this again from Paul George next year? Do you move off? So do you move off him then? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Harford. What was so disconcerting for me was when that post game interview and Paul George says, I don't think this is championship or bust year for us. That just makes no sense, especially when you sign a 2-year deal. So, incredibly talented. I know you've defended him so many times, Nate. I respect you for going to bat for your boy PG over and over again, but I don't know, man, guys. What shocked me the most was just how bad Lou Will and Montrezl Harrell were, especially in that Denver series. I just don't know if you really can go forward with them. You just need a bigger body, right, for AD and Jokic. So I just don't think the Clippers were constructed as well as we thought they were. So
I just think they were out of sync. I absolutely think they were out of sync. Like when you remove yourself from play for that long, then finally get back into practice to rebuild that chemistry with your guys, and then at that point you're having to exit that situation and come back in for a second time. There comes a point where at the end of the day you can't flip the switch like that without the chemistry built in, especially on defense, right? Like it's just not going to happen. And I think that unfamiliarity with each other at that point in time, what was really killed them. Now we talk about Paul George. I've gone to bat for him so many times. I still will. What I'll say, we'll get into Jimmy Butler later in this pod, but he probably edged out Paul George. Yeah, he probably edged out Paul George in my top 10
probably
at this point.
Right.
All right, Kevin. What I was going to say was that shot at the side of the backboard was pretty damning for Paul George, playoff P. That's not going to leave a good taste in anyone's mouth. And neither did that comment, Scott. I'm glad you mentioned that comment because this is a draft-oriented podcast. This is a player developmental podcast first and foremost. Obviously, I'm going to have conversations about the NBA and what's going on in the league and current events because it's important that we still follow the league as a whole. We still analyze the league, especially from a young player's perspective, and then we can kind of take a look at the veterans and some of the lessons that we might be able to learn from them because that's where all these young players want to go, right? They want to end up in the league. That's the kind of basketball and lifestyle that they want to emulate. So it's still important that we talk about that, even on a draft podcast. It can't just be about the prospects and evaluating skills and talent. It's looking at the sport as a whole and seeing what kind of lessons can be learned and emulated from. And that point that you made, Scott, about that comment, that's a great thing to take away because while there is truth to what he said in terms of normally when you bring big pieces in like that, you're usually not winning a championship that very first year. And that's why what the Lakers have done this year, what was actually remarkable in that sense, because if you think about it, LeBron led like a completely new Lakers team, even with a new big shiny piece coming in Anthony Davis. They didn't have that familiarity and that chemistry with one another from a previous year or previous few years. They came in and they got the job done just knowing that they have the leadership in place to be able to play off of and trust in terms of game planning, in terms of what they wanted to do defensively, how they were going to approach film study and sit down with each other and focus from that perspective with guys like LeBron and Frank Vogel there. I mean, having that leadership is huge. And I'm not downplaying Doc Rivers, as I mentioned with Jacob, for our listeners from our last pod who got to listen to that with Jacob Birkinshaw from the Overstated NBA show. I really like the Doc hire because I think he's a mature grown up who's going to come in and hold players accountable at the very least. And I don't think it's a question of talent with Philly, not to get on too much of a tangent regarding Philly, because that's not what we're here to do. We'll save that conversation for a different day, but he's going to at least come in and hold people accountable. I think for the most part he did with the Clippers, but at the same time, just rebuilding that chemistry on such short notice, you can't flip that switch without consistency throughout the year. And they didn't have that. And part of that's coming from Kawhi sitting out games and not knowing when he was going to play or not play. And Harford, I know you had some thoughts about that throughout the year, the Kawhi sitting, not sitting stuff. Where are you kind of at on that? Because that sounds like we're all coming to a consensus that it really was just chemistry, and they were a little arrogant. They thought they could flip the switch and they couldn't.
I really, that's a good question. The load management really doesn't bother me that much because I feel like Kawhi put himself in a position where I feel like he's earned to do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially what he did with Toronto last year, because it was just like there were a lot of folks around the league that were just like that were ready, that had crowned him. You know what I mean? Like Kawhi's here. You know, he's dethroned LeBron or KD, whoever's your one currently. My thing is though, yeah, they did. I feel like it was in the end, it was like it really was. It was just like it was the arrogance. It was the arrogance thing that kind of led to their downfall. And like I'm really looking forward to the stories that come out of that locker room, because there are more and more stories that I've heard, at least from the other pundits who talk about it, that they came in just purely from an athletic standpoint. Somebody like Kawhi a superstar came in and they made all sorts of accommodations for Kawhi that they didn't give to the other role players like Trez, like, you know what I mean? Like Trez, like Lou, et cetera, et cetera. These guys who before they didn't have a superstar, what did they stretch? I forget what year that was. That last year they stretched Golden State to 6.
Yeah, that was last
before.
year. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that it's just like that resentment, and that overall it's just like that resentment combined with the fact that like that Kawhi is not like, this is another conversation, but the fact that this playoffs gave us a very real and graphic look at Kawhi, at the difference between a Kawhi and a LeBron, whereas LeBron is a galvanizer and Kawhi doesn't have that yet. He might. I mean, he is what he is at this point, and I think he could develop it, you know, to end his career maybe. But like he is not like he's not vocal. He's not like a rah guy. And I don't like the leadership thing. It's just like I don't know if the Clippers had that, because they damn sure didn't listen to Doc. So it was like, well, who's it gonna be? And they were looking at Kawhi, and Kawhi is gonna do what Kawhi does. Like he's gonna eat. You know what I mean?
But isn't that why you run it back another year? Isn't that why you bring everybody back to truly figure out what you have from a leadership standpoint in terms of the players around you, what you could build from a chemistry standpoint, kind of as Paul George alluded to, and we can certainly talk about some of the what you shouldn't say at a microphone at a press conference from this bubble, between what Michael Porter Jr. said about COVID to the comment that Paul George made that we're critiquing now. There were certainly some lessons to be learned for those younger players, taking notice of what was going on in the bubble in terms of what not to say at a press conference. But I think, for just looking at it from the outside, and there's a lot from the inside that we don't know, that hasn't come out yet, that we're not around that team every day, that locker room. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes. But just from three guys outside looking in, I feel like there's still a lot for that team, or there could have been for that team to accomplish. And I think that still can be, just because they changed the coach. I don't think we need to have these conversations about major and drastic roster changes, because I think there still could be a lot to be accomplished. I think that's why you run it back, Scott.
I mean, just going back to, earlier, I mean, you run it back, but again, I mean, who do you trust? So, I mean, to get out of the West, you're going to need a big body, right? To guard AD or Jokic. Doubling Jokic was a death sentence in the second round. So, I mean, do you trust Zubac? So I definitely understand about running it back, but I just think that you at least need to tweak the roster and get a better, big body there. And then also, you hear stuff about the Clippers being interested in Rondo and wanting a point guard. Granted, I thought they were able to initiate offense well, without a traditional point guard, unless you consider Reggie Jackson a traditional point guard. But yeah, I'm not sure if the roster as constructed is as good as we really thought they were. There are a lot of great perimeter defenders and great wing players, but I'm just not convinced yet about that, guys.
I think it's absolutely funny how all of this talk went from you need to downgrade in size to play small ball to keep up with a team like Golden State to the point where it got to micro ball in Houston to now
Right.
everyone's
Right.
saying how much size do they have around them to compete with a team like the Lakers. It's funny how the landscape, the conversation drastically shifts, not even within a year's time. We're talking about in a few months' time. But now all of a sudden there's a fire sale for skilled size. And that's why somebody like me who wants to do this for a living, who is hopeful I can continue to do this for a living, who's someone who sits back and evaluates talent on a grand scale. I never thought that you shouldn't have size. I never thought that you should drastically shift your game plan and your evaluation scale because you need to keep up with a team like Golden State. No, make Golden State adjust to what you have. Trust in the players that you bring in, trust in how you evaluate, and make someone else have to adjust for you. That's what the Lakers did. They trusted in the signs that they had. They said, well, fine, we may not have the best shot creators on the perimeter as another team might, but we're going to pound you down low. We're going to figure out how to use those guys. We're going to figure out how to incorporate different motion style tricks within our offense, and we're going to take advantage of the size that we have, and we're going to beat you that way because we're going to out prep you, we're going to outwork you, we're going to outsmart you. So I think it's so funny how all of a sudden these teams that wanted to back off of size, now we have to go back to doing this. I just think it's a laughable point. I don't know if you guys had any last thoughts on that.
Well, I think it's going to be funny. That's actually the most interesting point, and I feel like or one of the most interesting points. And my mind immediately went when you said Golden State. I was just like, okay, well, next year is going to be a party. You know what I mean? Like next year, Golden State's going to have something to say about that. And I don't know. It doesn't have to be, to your point, it doesn't have to be a referendum on what style is the best or et cetera, et cetera. But it's like, okay, who are the dogs in the West? Who are coming out of the West? The Houston Rockets, it seemed like they just died with Daryl Morey stepping down. Like they're going to be a whole new. I don't. You probably know way more about it than I do, but
we don't know what they're going to be. That's the thing. We don't know. We don't know who's going to take over that regime in the front office. We still don't know who the coach is going to be. We don't know what Houston's going to be.
Right, but it's clear that they're probably going to be something different. I heard rumors about. I mean, what's this rumors about Westbrook getting traded to the Knicks?
What?
Jesus.
What? Are you serious?
Yeah.
That's out there, Scott. That's out there. The rumor, even more so than Westbrook, is that they're not willing to. They're willing to take on a big contract to kind of bring somebody in, whether that's Chris Paul, whether that's a Russell Westbrook. Then of course you have the rumors flying off of the rumors that if Chris Paul goes there, Melo might welcome a homecoming to the Knicks. There's a lot of stuff going on with the Knicks in terms of what they're actually going to try to do, what their plan is. There's a lot of rumors to come out of that. So yeah, that's actually happening, Scott.
Sell the team.
How you feel about Westbrook to the Knicks, Scott? Hot take. We got.
Yeah, honestly, I'd just be heartbroken for my man Westbrook that he's just getting tossed around now from team to team. I would be so sad for him. I just want him to be on a contender, but
yeah,
it looks like
where's his home?
Yeah. That's a great question. I don't know if he does. I don't know if he even has a home.
And he might not. Honestly, I feel like he could benefit by going. I don't know where he would fit in, but to kind of wrap the thread at where I was going to Nate's point before, like I feel like he would benefit from going to like a Golden State and playing for like a Steve Kerr, so he can learn, so he can like finish out his career, like understanding how to be efficient in some sort. But that's another conversation. But to Nate's point, I feel like Golden State is gonna I think Golden State, this may be a little bit too early, but I think Golden State is a Western Conference Finals team. I don't know who they're playing against, depending on who the Lakers either add or because the Lakers they got some questions heading into the offseason too. But the Golden State's they got a high pick. Golden State is going to have something to say for sure, and they are expecting to come out and be relentless.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Harford, do not bury the Knicks just yet in terms of this regime. Can we have a little faith in a Temple grad in
No.
Leon Rose, T for Temple U? Can we have a little faith, please?
I mean, honestly, it's I'm getting to the point where like my heart is not compelled or moved by whether the Knicks live or die. It's just at this point, it's just like I just feel cold. Like they're just cold. It's just cold. Like I feel no emotion. It's like it's hard. It's
All
hard
right.
because they've just been so bad.
All right, that says it all. I'm not going to let Harford drag himself into a dark place for this podcast. This is a happy podcast.
Yeah, it's
So
Sunday morning, man. Yeah,
we're
let's
we're
uplift.
gonna we're gonna bring this around to the basketball in the bubble. I thought the play-in games and the playoffs in total were some of the best basketball moments I can remember watching in more recent years. For not playing for 4 months and then coming in under multiple sets of circumstances to perform at that high of a level. I mean, it's nothing short of extraordinary, right? Obviously, offense ruled the day to start and through the first few rounds. But as we got to the conference finals and even the finals, it was the defense that ruled the day as teams got much more playing time with one another, got more familiar and adjusted with each other from a chemistry standpoint once again. And that's ultimately what defense is, along with effort, is communication. So, Harford, what did you think of the quality of basketball within the bubble, and what would you grade the product as a whole if you had to slap a grade on there?
I'm sorry. Can you ask that question again?
No, you're all good, man. So what did you think of the quality of basketball within the bubble, and what would you grade the product as a whole?
A++, man. Like that the whole bubble, the playoff basketball really, I mean, they really did came out like putting everything else aside, like, and this is like, it's something that you can't regard, and we'll probably, I mean, we've all talked about it beforehand, and we might dip into that before, but like the social politics that was surrounding it outside of basketball, like they weathered that immaculately, and like they weathered that storm beautifully, and they still like the level of play in the like inside the bubble, starting with bubble TJ Warren, who became a different player entirely.
That's right.
What do you have, like 3 or 4 50-point games in a row or whatever? Like he just went psycho like from the start. Like the level of competition was just like you had guys chattering, you had Dame trash talking, you had the rise of the Trailblazers come in hot. Like Trailblazers were playing so hot that like even, I mean, Charles Barkley, he picks every series wrong basically. But he was guaranteeing Portland would sweep the Lakers. Like
Charles has an unhealthy love for Portland, just on a general level. But
he must have had some good road, like he must have had some good road games in Portland. Like I don't know where he was going to the bars or whatever, or the strip clubs or whatever. He must have had himself a good time like during his playing career. But the product over, not to get sidetracked, but the product overall, like A++, like those guys were after it, and we'll talk about Jimmy Butler, but like it did so much. It was like, it's fascinating to see. It did so much for certain players. Like this bubble, I don't know if it goes down the same way if COVID never happens. And
well, it brought us back to a sense of normalcy. I mean, that's what it did for everyone. Like we didn't have, especially at the start of the bubble with the playing games, like we didn't have football back yet. We didn't have a lot of other sports back yet. Baseball wasn't what it ended up being. There were so many positive tests exploding with teams like the Phillies and the Marlins, where we didn't even know if baseball was going to end up being a thing and happen. And we had our questions about college sports. Where was college football even going to take off? But the NBA put the bubble together, and we were all able to kind of come together, have our own little firesides from whatever it was, a Zoom call standpoint, a text thread. Everybody was able to come together and watch these games and sort of just feel like, holy shit, we have sports back. Like we have something normal. Like it's incredible.
Yeah, and it was flawless. Like all that. Like I agree with everything you said, and it was kind of flawless. Like, I don't know where they made it any real. There was no, to my knowledge, there was no outbreak, right?
There's no outbreak, 0 positive tests.
Like, I mean, they had a couple infractions with dudes probably bringing groupies into the locker room and whatnot, but like,
yeah.
Scott, get in here. What are your thoughts?
Man, I thought it was a good point, Harford, when you're talking about just like the effect of COVID had, and I mean, COVID's been terrible for us, but one positive thing was me being able to see Bol in the starting lineup. I mean, that I was sold on the bubble when I was able to see Jeremiah Grant and Bol and Paul Millsap and Mason Plumlee and Jokic. I mean, that was crazy. And
the jumbo lineup.
Jumbo lineup, man, and seeing them hit a three, man, I needed that. I think even since the Lakers and Clippers, I felt guys they set the tone with just a rock fight of a game, going down to that last shot, which was a Paul George miss. Maybe that was foreshadowing for the rest of the bubble, but that the Suns just 8-0, just completely on a tear. Devin Booker just elevating, and just also seeing that crazy Raptors Nets game at the end of the bubble, and just seeing Karis LeVert and Damian Lillard go at each other. I just thought they were great great games, even leading up to the playoffs, and I absolutely agree with you too. That the bubble was incredible. An A grade from me for sure.
And obviously, we have to talk about the world champion Los Angeles Lakers and recap the finals against the Miami Heat. I kind of want to start on the Miami side, though. That you boys both know there was a real point where I wanted to pick the Heat to upset the Lakers before the series started because of what Miami did through the Eastern Conference playoffs. I gave you guys a rundown of what I thought about the teams in the East before the playoffs got going, and I didn't mention the Heat whatsoever in that rundown, and boy, did they make me look dumb. I admittedly didn't think that they'd make it as far as they did because of the lack of experienced personnel in the biggest moments, but that didn't matter to anyone they faced. I said all along, Milwaukee had the best player in the conference. Toronto was the most prepared team to come into the bubble and the best coach. And Boston had the greatest upside of any of the clubs because of their combination of talent and superb coaching from Brad Stevens. Well, it turns out I need to amend that statement slightly. The most prepared and the best coach team turned out to be Miami all along. The adjustments made from within game to game were phenomenal. Everyone constantly communicated with one another, worked hard, and bought in, and that started with Spo. And that went down through Jimmy and Bam and the confidence they all instilled in guys like Hero, Duncan Robinson, Kendrick Nunn, that all seeped out even through the rest of the roster. It was utterly remarkable. So, like I said, we'll get to the Lakers in a sec. But, Scott, what were your thoughts on the Eastern Conference teams as a whole, and what did you think of the run Miami put together to make the finals?
Man, guys, I don't know about you, but I just felt like injuries robbed us of a great Eastern Conference first round. And juxtapose that with the Western Conference where you got 2 Game 7s and a Game 6. I just felt that when it injured Sabonis, it injured Ben Simmons, and it injured Katie and Kyrie, we would have had just 3 incredible first round games. But other than that, I thought overall was a good Eastern Conference playoffs. I thought the Raptors Celtics series was was a classic. Definitely disappointed in the Celtics for not being able to close those first 2 games against Miami in the Eastern Conference Finals. But I thought on that side they did their thing. And the Heat, like you said, Nate, they were spectacular. I just didn't realize how great their ball movement was going back to the regular season. Tyler Hero dropping 37, on the Celtics, and Duncan Robinson doing his thing, and Jimmy Butler and Bam and Dragic playing absolutely out of their minds. It was actually incredible to watch the Heat do their thing. So they were great. Condolences to my man Kevin Black. That's a tough inning for him, but the Heat were great.
Oh, don't worry. Kevin's gonna get his chance to hop back in here in a second.
Do.
He always does. But Harford, what were your thoughts on the Eastern Conference?
The Eastern Conference, I didn't really get the chance to really catch the Eastern Conference too much, especially in the earlier rounds, because I just felt like I think it was because I had a predisposition that it was either going to come down to Toronto or Boston. So that being said, I fully discounted the Miami Heat ever making this illustrious run that they did. Like they were still off my radar pretty much until that Celtics series, and it's like it was just straight poetry, like what they were able to do, like that whole team. We know, like obviously the pundits will talk about how, we know how, they don't, and I feel like it's honestly that conversation, just for decency's sake, is just kind of put to rest about Jimmy Butler being a number one or being a superstar or whatever, about, especially after he came from Philly. But it just like that what the organization put together, that's what it looks like when the organization puts together, was it 15 or so guys that all are buying into the program, right? Which is what I don't know what I mean. I know, Nate, you have your strong opinions on Philly, but it's like if you're gonna win a title like the Lakers did, that's what you have to like all those guys in Miami are bought in. And that was clear, like playing through this bubble, like when they were stacked up against other teams. Like, not to say that, like, I mean, in Boston they're probably bought into, but like you got like unchained dogs in Miami. You know what I mean? You got straight Rottweilers that are just itching to get after it. And like that was clear and it was apparent, and that was so much fun to see them just chase it down, man. They really went out and like they maintained a level of focus, and they really got after these dudes in the Eastern Conference. Like Miami came in and nobody really knew what hit them in these playoffs, man. Like they drug the other teams down to the deep and dark waters. It suffocated them, and we'll remember a lot about this bubble for sure. But as far as like the East goes, and like how the Heat came out of it, how they crawled out of the swamp, like that like the Miami Heat were a swamp creature that crawled out of the sewer. Nobody saw them coming, and they just like they drowned them all. And like that, we will give them respect. I feel like we all agree we will give them respect for that, like for that alone, regardless of the fact that they didn't win the title. And I know that, like, from the execution standpoint, you love them for that reason. And that was something that was very, like, I didn't see nor notice that until basically like the Celtics series. But I know that you were like from a pure X's and O's standpoint, you love the execution and you love what Spo did and put together. Honestly, it's a larger conversation for Spo too. Like, he's like, I don't know if he has his respect around the basketball world, but like maybe if he gets another one, we're talking like Hall of Fame coach, like man's paid his dues. Like he's up there.
Let me hop in real quick. He's already a Hall of Fame coach.
Okay. All right. I see you, Kevin.
I think I actually agree with Kevin on that point. And the thing that we've brought up, I guess the key word is mental, right? I mean, when you're able to study the game at that high of a level, think about it. Frank Vogel, Eric Spoelstra, two guys that paid their dues and put the grind in the film room. They're both addicted to watching, studying the game. They can't get enough of it. Think about some of the other great coaches that can come to my mind off the top of my head. I mean, another guy like Brad Stevens, absolutely, his Celtics still put up a fight against Miami in the Eastern Conference playoffs here. Somebody like Rick Carlisle from the Western Conference, the Mavericks. Harford, I know you were high on the Mavericks all year, and in your own right, you absolutely should be going into the next season because they're led by an all-generational talent in Luka Doncic, who prides himself off of playing the game at an incredibly high level from a mental standpoint, and he's backed by a coach who will just literally live in the film room, and that's all he'll do all day is just sit there, whether it's booting up Synergy, whatever he's doing to watch film. I mean, that's just what he's doing. That's what he lives. That's what he believes in, right? So when you approach the game from that level, and then on the court, you combine that sort of mental toughness, that willingness to play mental warfare with the preparation that you did going into those games, and you combine that with that dog mentality that everybody from Miami had. That is a special creature. And I think that's what the Lakers pretty much did to everybody too. They were just outplaying everyone from a mental warfare standpoint. But I mean, going even deeper into the finals, the listeners who got a chance to catch my finals pod, as I mentioned earlier with Jacob last week, how I felt about the series as a whole in terms of thinking it was much closer than the record indicated heading into Game 5. I mean, Miami gave LA a real dogfight worth documenting, despite not having the same physical stature and experience to compete with LeBron and company on the other side. A number of metrics were either dead even or very close apart from a few that Jacob got around to mentioning. Then Game 5 happened, right? No, Jimmy Butler happened, actually. I don't think I can recall one player giving LeBron a haymaker like that in the finals. Obviously, he's lost to great teams in San Antonio and Golden State. Durant gave him the business a bit, so did Kawhi defensively. But neither of those guys mimicked his approach to the game and basically out LeBron the way Jimmy did. It was honestly one of the most special things to watch, and I couldn't have been more thrilled to have to watch LeBron overcome that type of challenge. So, I mean, Scott, what were your impressions of Jimmy in the finals, and do you think he might have been the single greatest challenge from a one-man army perspective LeBron has had to face in the finals, or do you still give more credit to what Kawhi and KD did against him in wins? Because I think just speaking from that single player outlook, Jimmy gave LeBron the most he's ever had to directly go up against in the finals, and quite frankly, up until the very end, Butler was a better contributor in my mind than LeBron in the series as a whole.
I mean, you said it. I mean, Jimmy absolutely mimicked his LeBron's approach, and I thought Game 3 was a great example of that. I mean, a 40-point triple-double. I'm pretty sure he had more rebounds and assists than LeBron as well. And LeBron just not being able to execute down the stretch, and Jimmy, really did his thing. So he was phenomenal in Game 3. I mean, Game 5, Jimmy was great. I mean, 30-plus point triple-double as well. I thought LeBron was just as great as he was. The Lakers just weren't able to get that last possession. So, he was absolutely incredible, and I didn't know Jimmy even had a level like that. So, I mean, was he the best? One man, wrecking crew LeBron had to go up against. I would say, I would have to say yes. Obviously, KD's a more talented player, and in 2017 and 2018, KD absolutely took over both those Game 3s, but KD just had more help. So I feel like you have to give it to Jimmy, but again, I only think he out LeBron in only Game 3, not Game 5.
Can I hop in for a second?
I was actually just going to go to you, Kevin. We'll let Harper get in a second, but
yeah, don't get me wrong. I think Jimmy did great, but I think we're forgetting one performance in the finals that's probably better than all of them. Can we just remember Dirk when he played against LeBron? Like
right,
Dirk killed
true.
The Heat in the series in the finals. I think we can't forget about that. I mean, if you look at all his stats, like I don't think we've ever really seen one man carry a team quite like Dirk did that playoff series, right? Like
that is true. I guess from a statistical standpoint, I guess we'd probably have to give it to Dirk. I just think just taking a look at how Jimmy did it, like having to out LeBron, as I said, that's just an incredibly special moment for me, because Scott made a great point. I don't think any of us really knew that Jimmy had that level of hit. And as a player, when you can even be mentioned in a conversation like that, in a discussion in terms of how you're playing the game and how you're approaching the game with a guy who could end up ending his career as the best player we've ever seen in NBA history by the time it's actually all said and done. I mean, that is special stuff. And what Dirk did was special in his own right. I mean, what he did, combining scoring from all three levels, from being automatic at the free throw line, having that unstoppable fadeaway move that no one was able to guard or bother. I mean, at that time we were comparing that turnaround one-legged fadeaway to like Kareem's skyhook, for crying out loud, in terms of like how unstoppable it was at that time. So no, Kevin, that was an incredibly well-timed point by you. I'm glad that you said that. And you brought up that point, but what were your thoughts to kind of wrap it up about Jimmy?
I mean, I think we talked about this on the podcast so many times, Nate. We both did. I mean, as a Miami fan, like, don't get me wrong, I had a lot of faith in them, but I didn't expect us to make it as far as we did. when Bam went down and Dragic went down in the first game of the finals, I thought it was going to be honestly a sweep. Like, I thought we were just done for. And I'm glad that we had a lot of heart. I mean, we played with Heat culture, which is what they always do. The Heat are known for playing tough no matter what the circumstances are. And as well as Jimmy played, I think he can get better. I think there's very large potential that we can go back in the East again and win it next year. Yeah, Brooklyn's going to be there with KD and Kyrie, but I don't trust Kyrie at all. I don't think any of us do.
Yeah,
Giannis could leave. Yeah. Giannis could leave. I know Boston's looking at trade opportunities, so who knows what they're going to be like next year. Who knows what Philly's going to be. Who knows if Ben and Joel are going to be there still. The East is kind of in turmoil right now with who's going to do what. It wouldn't really surprise me if Miami repeated in the East.
Harford, before we fully move off of Miami, please jump in here. Give me that Jimmy Butler love. Give me that Jimmy Butler over Paul George talk, because I know you got it.
Oh, no, yeah, absolutely. No, Jimmy Butler is, I mean, to everyone else's point, like, valid. Like, didn't know, to Scott's point, didn't know he had this level. To Kevin's point, he could also age like fine wine and level up, like, in the next couple of seasons here. I think what's fascinating to me about Jimmy Butler is we all have to remember and acknowledge, like, this was a dude who I think, like, I mean, Nate, I know, like, I know your sentiments are like firmly rooted in Sixers basketball, and so maybe you have a different opinion. But I feel like at least on a larger scale, the talking heads, like, I feel like they gave, like, Jimmy Butler was like, it was kind of like a stain on his name, like, after Philly. Like, he had a short stint, like, got traded. Like, there seems to be, you know what I mean? Like, he was in Minnesota, he was perceived and labeled as difficult, and then he went to Philly. And it was just like he just didn't really seem to fit in anywhere. And it's like, it was so, like, the wins and losses aside, like, it was just awesome to see him. You know, we talked about, like, Westbrook not having a home. Like, he had never been. I mean, Westbrook had a home at OKC, obviously, and they loved him there. But, like, this is, like, truly, maybe he had that in Chicago, but I don't really remember, because that was just such a long time ago. Maybe he had a home in Chicago. And maybe that's where but he wasn't, you know, he wasn't the same. That was a different Jimmy Butler then. But it's just been awesome to see him come into his own with, you know, like Kevin said, like, around and rally around Heat culture, and have him be embraced, and have him embrace, you know, the cultures and the values that you know that starts with Pat Riley. So that's like my big takeaway, is just like, he was kind of like, you know, this Heat season, I feel like he kind of went under the radar, and everybody, like, a large part of the Heat narrative this season in general was like, okay, nobody's really considering them seriously as contenders. And for that reason, you gotta have to feel like Jimmy Butler was kind of like, he was kind of playing for his name. You know what I mean? Like, he, you know, after everything that preceded him in the past.
Yeah, no, I certainly agree with that as well. And you know that we talked plenty of times, but I thought he should have had a home in Philly. I certainly wanted him with the Sixers. I know there was obviously a lot of stuff that happened behind the scenes, why he chose to ultimately end up in a different place, end up in Miami. But yeah, a lot of the larger media outlets did take the time at one point to slander him for making that decision to leave again, to go somewhere else, because they thought that maybe he couldn't have a home. Maybe he was that difficult of a person where he was never going to have another proper home in the league. And I think you made a point about Chicago. Yeah, he was absolutely loved in Chicago when he was there, because he grew up with that team, right? Like, he went from not playing any minutes a game to getting a certain role to exploding out of that role and becoming a star for that team. And the whole reason why he was traded from Chicago in the first place was that they didn't feel like he was worth the contract. They didn't feel like they could build a championship contender around him. And they traded him to Minnesota for what has essentially become peanuts. And and I mean, when you take a look at what he's done in Miami now, well, clearly he's good enough to galvanize the team to go to the finals, because he just did it. He literally just did it. So Yeah, his reputation has certainly had its ups and downs, but I think hopefully, at least now, it's kind of been given some new light, and people can stop talking about the difficult Jimmy Butler and maybe embrace him more for who he is. Someone who just wants to come in, do whatever it takes to win games, because that's what he's there for. He's not there for just landing the biggest contract he can. He's not there for all of the celebrity that comes along with it. He's there to work. He's there to grind, and he's there to win basketball games. And I applaud him for it. I've kind of always been a Jimmy Butler fan, probably not as much as I should, just given some of my rankings that I've mentioned a few times here on this podcast. But yeah, I've always admired Jimmy Butler for the kind of person he is, what he grew up through, what he came out of in his personal life to become what he is today. It's one of the great stories to any listeners out there who haven't read through the Jimmy Butler story from where he started, from his teenager days all the way through to now. There have been multiple great long form pieces written on his backstory. Please go out there and read one of them, or all of them if you're that much of a Jimmy Butler fan, because what he's gone through from a personal perspective is inspiring, and it's encouraging to anyone out there who maybe they feel like they don't have a proper place in this world. Maybe they're feeling down on themselves. They don't believe that they can put in the work and actually get somewhere. Well, you know what? Yeah, Jimmy Butler might be a little more physically gifted than some of us out there, but what Jacob talked about on our podcast last week was that he's probably not one of like the top 10 most physically gifted athletes in the NBA, but he's accomplished his goals and made a name for himself in so many other different ways, and left an imprint on the game. And I think it's important to recognize that sometimes, that it's more about the work and the effort and the belief in yourself than it is just pure talent.
Yeah, and to even add on what all three of you guys were saying, not only was it Jimmy kind of embracing that Heat culture, it was great to see him getting that love back too. Whether it be Tyler Hero saying, I want to win this finals for Jimmy. Coach Spo, how he was like glowing about Jimmy, and when he's hunched over that scoring table saying this is a picture of a champion before a champion, and and Jimmy going from wearing Tyler Hero's high school jersey to wearing Spo's old college jersey. It was great to see that he received that love, and he just like freely reciprocated it too. So as a person that wanted, like you, Nate, wanted Jimmy to find a home in Philly, it's amazing to see how much they love him and how much he loves his team and how perfect that culture fits him. So I'm so happy for him.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as for the Lakers, we obviously can't overlook the 2020 NBA champions. I mean, LeBron and AD were the best duo throughout the regular season and in the playoffs. To me, that's not much of a surprise from a talent standpoint. I'm actually impressed we didn't see a major injury from AD through the majority of the championship run, because he hasn't exactly had health on his side during his career. But I suppose he was due for a bit of luck to rest on his side with that, right? But through the year, I said I would have voted LeBron for MVP. I would have voted AD for Defensive Player of the Year, and I thought the Lakers would be the best team from the start. They were my preseason pick, and they won it all. So, Harford, I'll start with you. Were you guys surprised at all that ended up being what happened? Were you expecting another team from either conference to take the crown, or another player to take it away from LeBron?
From the very start, I felt like it was LeBron's championship to lose. And it was very theatrical the whole way it played out with COVID interrupted the season, because then obviously we all know that The Last Dance dropped, and that just reinvigorated and reignited and just doused flames all over the conversation about LeBron being better than Jordan, Jordan being better than LeBron, et cetera, et cetera. So I felt like more than anything, I wasn't expecting. I mean, the Clippers were out there, but again, to my point in where we first started up about the Clippers and Paul George being that too. I thought when it came down to it, I never really, even if it went to a Game 7, if we were to get a Lakers and Clippers Western Conference Finals, I never had faith in Paul George's ability to deliver. So I thought that I never really took them seriously as contenders. I had a friend. Interesting. You talk about like other teams, like the expectations of other teams, like upsetting that like the narrative of the Lakers winning the championship. It's funny because my friend, he made a really interesting point to me. He said we rarely in basketball get the matchups that like all the pundits and all of us are like that we really want. You know what I mean? Like we never got a high stakes LeBron and Kobe final, for example. Like those kind of things like allude, like as much as we do get a lot of the guys going head to head like a lot of the times, but it's like throughout history, I think there's a trend of we just don't get the matchup that we don't really ever get the matchup that we thought that we would. And that's like, I mean, piggybacking off of the Miami Heat conversation, I mean, nobody that just upset everybody else's bracket too. So but the Lakers, yeah, I thought that I thought that the only thing that could beat the Lakers in this championship run was the Lakers themselves. And I thought what concerned me most was that the Lakers going into the bubble were not a shooting team. And I think that the first couple weeks of the bubble, or maybe the first week, like the first couple games that they had reflected that. They were just like, they were just very rusty, especially compared to the rest of the league. And you had teams like the Portland, like popping off, and like they were just, and guys like, in teams like Phoenix, you know what I mean? That were just like, and Dallas. And it's interesting. It's fascinating to watch their pattern, the Lakers, how they became an efficient shooting team, like over each playoff series and each playoff rounds. And a lot, and that's a lot in part, I feel like we've had conversations about this in the past due to LeBron's leadership and his trust and his encouragement in the guys, which by the way, he didn't have last year.
Well, yeah, that's why they went and made a new roster, but
yeah. His patience, you know, I think there were some quotes attributed to Rondo that were just like, you know, I had to let LeBron know that his body language and chemistry around the guys, like you know what I mean, to keep that.
Yeah.
It was just like, this was honestly from top to bottom, this was a legacy roster, man. Like credit to the Lakers staff and organization, because nobody, you know, we were all throwing stones at Genie Buss and Pelinka, you know what I mean, in the off season, because it seemed like the moves that they were making, and we were just like, at least the larger part of the NBA, like that was the conversation. Like they really did build, like, at least if they don't repeat, whatever, but like as far as like this season alone, they made a legacy roster.
I love that comment from Rondo though, because that just shows you that we're all human at the end of the day, right? We all make mistakes. We all need to keep learning and keep bettering how we interact and keep in mind with one another, because what one person needs in terms of encouragement, in terms of keeping them driven towards a goal, is going to be completely different than what the next player needs. And
exactly.
I think LeBron's done a great job of managing that throughout the majority of his career, but sometimes there's going to be bumps in the road, especially when you're in a situation like the bubble where there are so many other aspects coming at you from a mental standpoint, that you need to stay grounded and need to keep different things in mind for different people in a different way than what you're used to throughout the course of the 82 game regular season, where things are normal, and then a normal playoff atmosphere. And your point about getting a matchup that maybe we didn't necessarily like want from the start, but I think we got the playoff matchup and the finals matchup that we ultimately deserved. What are your thoughts on that, Scott?
You know, real quick, going off of Harper's point, we didn't get that Ravens Chiefs matchup here like we wanted. So when you said that, I felt that, bro. Oh, that hurt.
That is true. Bill Belichick always has to weasel his way in there to ruin something for the pundits, but
right. Yeah, no, exactly. No, I agree with Nate Harper. I think you guys, you know, spoke really well about that. And I'm glad that there was some accountability to LeBron, and I think that was, you know, especially 2016, having Ty Lue, being able to kind of go at LeBron and keep him accountable. It was great that you had someone like Rondo that could do the same. Uh, I remember, guys, I think it was Richard Jefferson talking about LeBron's leadership style, and he was saying that LeBron would, you know, gather everyone, go to all these events, put his arm around them and really try to build a relationship so that when he yells at you in the playoffs, there's already an established relationship. So it's nothing personal. And I just thought that bond, man, that the Lakers built as a unit off the court was just perfect for the bubble. Whether it be those Madden tournaments that they were having, or just watching film together in each other's rooms. I just felt that type of leadership with LeBron and keeping that group together just almost made like the role players kind of greater than the sum of their parts. So they were great. The LeBron and AD pick and roll is unstoppable. And I just thought I was so impressed with Rondo and Caruso, and Dwight Howard in the Nuggets series. So I think the LeBron effect really made its way down, and I think it also helped with AD and helping AD fight through those injuries too. So LeBron was spectacular. He deserves all the credit that he's getting.
No, he does, and he orchestrated the talent on the Lakers all year long. He helped move the chess pieces around the board to where they needed to be. He knew how to take advantage of Anthony Davis and maximize his abilities on both offense and defense to the fullest. And he was the captain. He was the leader. He steered the ship in the right direction all year long, and he deserved to be Finals MVP. He deserves all the praise now. That's just who LeBron is. And at the end of the day, that's what we expect from him, right? I think we expect that level of greatness from him at this point because he's proven in so many different situations that he could do it. And I for one was certainly happy to see him get another championship. I thought he deserved it. All of the LeBron quote unquote hate that I might have piled on him from his days choosing to go to Miami all the way through to now. I mean, I've grown to respect him a lot more as the years have gone on because I think we've seen him literally grow up and mature and handle things in a completely different way, whether it's on the court or off the court, than maybe we might have expected, right? Like him building the school that he did for young people to come in and learn more about the world and be educated in a safe space, in a proper space. What he's done for charity work, what he's meant for people just as an icon, as someone to be able to look up to. Like I think LeBron's scope goes far beyond basketball, and it's truly remarkable and impressive what he's done. And to anyone who said that the Lakers weren't going to get a championship with him at the forefront, I mean, they kind of look foolish now, right? Because he did it. He did it with a completely different roster. He did it through chemistry building, through film work, through teamwork, and that's the right way to do it. You brought up a great point, Scott, about galvanizing the troops and being able to talk to people and work with them in your workspace outside of the job to build those relationships so that when you come into work, you know that you have that trust and that accountability on the other side of you, right? You at the very least have that respect for one another. Maybe you don't love each other all the time. Maybe you're not buddy talking all the time. But if you have that personal relationship with everyone, you at least have that mutual respect and you can work together to achieve a greater goal. And that's something that can be taken away from basketball. That's something that can be taken away from anyone in any walk of life. If you have respect for one another, you can certainly accomplish great things. And I actually think that's a great segue to the last main point and topic that I wanted to cover. While I have the two of you here, I want the last topic to be a tad bit bigger than basketball because we wouldn't be the friends that we are without being able to have conversations that exist off the court. And through the restart and through everything happening in the country with COVID-19, with social unrest, the players wanted to make a stand for what they believe in. And quite frankly, I think they did that successfully. Between everything the league did to support them in terms of giving them a platform to speak out and what players set out to do before and now after they came in the bubble, I think it's great to see guys expressing thoughts and expounding upon things that are more than X's and O's and using your platform for the things that matter in life is to be commended. And I, for one, will never tell someone to not stand for what they believe in, regardless of my personal thoughts and feelings. And I think what NBA players have done is give hope to the guys coming into the league. Again, this is a draft-oriented podcast first and foremost, but they've given hope to those guys to not be afraid to speak out on the platform they have right now in their communities, on college campuses, and interviews they might have with media personalities or league executives. So Well, last question I kind of want to ask the both of you. Harford, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on what the players in the league have done as a whole, and what do you think they've been successful? Do you think they've been successful in conveying the message to younger players? We're okay with you standing for a cause and expressing your opinion to spark change in the country you call home.
Whew. Man, that was deep.
Big,
Where do I begin?
big loaded question. Big words for the end.
Big words. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of. I mean, to your point. I mean, big question for the end. It's just like it's emblematic of where we're at this point in time, and we're in a moment, and it's not going anywhere, and it's kind of like, I don't want to say it's unavoidable because I feel like that gives it a negative connotation, but like, and I felt like the NBA players deeply felt this way. I know we talked about like COVID and like all the talks that went down in the bubble, as the players were coming back, as the players were deciding whether or not to come back to the league and play basketball. They had to make a lot of really tough choices, and I know it's always really easy to scrutinize them in the moment, about how Adam Silver decided to handle things and how the league and how the players decided to restart the league. But it was really wonderful what they all did in spite of that, because we're talking about just like a large group of people, an entire organization, and Adam Silver did that was I felt like it was a wonderful example of the commissioner letting the players like I want to say like an unprecedented level of an unprecedented amount of voice and an unprecedented like level of autonomy, like around leadership.
No, it was
like,
because every other sports league started to follow their lead in terms of letting the players have that platform, put stuff on the back of a jersey or a helmet, whatever the case may be. Everyone else took the lead of the NBA. So no, you're right. It is unprecedented.
Yeah, and it was like we all know, like what do we all say about the league, about these leagues all the time? It's like the NBA is a star and player driven league, but it's never really. It's honestly, we say that, but in the past, before all this bubble stuff happened, it's never really been exemplified like it has been in this bubble, when the players truly got to, they got to put whatever they wanted to on the back of their jersey. You had like Luka Doncic, like he had, I guess that was in like native Slovenian, like I don't know what it meant, but like he had something on the back of his jersey. Yeah. Right. Thank you. So it's just like the players really got a voice, and I thought, I mean, to answer your question in a simplified manner, it's just like there's so much else that's going to go into it, and I feel like history will only be more kind to them as we look back on this time. But it's just like they did something that was very hard to do. They gave everyone a voice, and I feel like they did it in a manner in which like I'm still struggling to understand how they did all that they did while all I guess standing up for the same message. That's very impressive.
It's remarkable to say the least, and I think your point about it being unprecedented on this individual level, where each player is able to sort of create this own platform and have it play out both on and off the court. It's never happened before. I mean, there have been some special moments that we can look back on in NBA history, especially when it comes to social unrest and social justice. Like you could go back, the old heads would know these stories much better than I would, about the days of Bill Russell and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, them being able to speak out off the court for certain things that they believe in and what they want to see happen in the country. You can fast forward to everything that happened with Donald Sterling and the Clippers taking their stand and leaving their mark on the court by taking off their warm-up jerseys and putting them in a pile, stating the kind of having that message that they didn't want to play for an owner like that. They see things differently. They want there to be justice, and they want there to be equality in the league that they play in from an ownership perspective. And now you have everything going on in the country, and you have each player being able to have their own individual platform and their own confidence in that brand and platform, because they're literally backed by the league. The league is letting them express themselves on an individual level and on a team level in ways that haven't happened before. And I think that confidence that comes from that is encouraging to younger players. And Scott, I'll let you jump in here in a second with all of your thoughts. But I mean, it's even seeping out to high level prospects that are choosing to go to HBCUs. And I think that's absolutely remarkable. Speaking up for a greater message, showing that there can absolutely be a lot better diversity. Things just don't have to be, black and white. This is how they've been for forever. This is how they're going to be. Switching up the game and changing it and having a better social platform and more confidence to do that because of where the league is going. I think it's remarkable. What are your kind of thoughts on some of that, Scott?
Yeah, Nate, I thought you made a great parallel to, the moment when, Jacob Blake shot, shot like 7 times, and just how kind of the parallel between that and I think 1968, where Will and Bill Russell were trying to figure out if they wanted to, MLK was assassinated. It was, man, Harper. I agree so much. I think what they were balancing, being isolated, being away from their families and away from their communities, and trying to figure out how to enact change was remarkable, and obviously not perfect, in the sense of, I mean, you're already isolated in the bubble, and emotions running high. We kind of touched on that earlier with people walking out of meetings, and younger players feeling that people were being condescending to them. But I think that they had the right people in their corner. I remember there was a piece about LeBron and Chris Paul talking to President Obama, and being able to just kind of get some clarity and figuring out how they wanted to approach owners to get their message across. So I think the players set up a blueprint on how to get their leagues and owners to commit and partner with them for different societal changes. And also, I guess we'd also be remiss to not mention the WNBA was, I mean, they were as maybe even more so, even more so at the forefront of this, and really trying to spark change as well. So it was great to see them, do that in union. And I think now this sets a precedent, and I think now different leagues have a greater clarity on how they want to approach it. And then we also saw how this helped spark, sparking the NFL as well, and having teams demanding change and things of that nature. So yeah, this was a big deal, and ultimately I thought the players handled it well, and probably will handle it really well going forward.
Harford, any other last thoughts on that subject?
Scott made a phenomenal point with the WNBA, because we can't, when we go back and revisit how this all happened, like it started like the NBA definitely sparked a movement that like even spread as far as like you had NHL, like they sparked a wave of change throughout professional sports in general.
Oh yeah. And see, and then NASCAR too, right? Was it Bubba Watson stuff during quarantine, or am I?
The Bubba Watson stuff. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, the WNBA, it's just like I love the communication that the stars from the NBA and the WNBA had. Like you had I think like you had I believe it was Kyrie I think he matched the salaries of the WNBA players who didn't play like for during the restart. Like you just had a whole bunch of phenomenal, I don't know, it just brought out the very best in a lot of players, and the ownership, even if it seemed like the players at times did have to twist the arms of the owners, you know what I mean? Because the stuff is like, it is what it is. Like we don't have to, spray perfume over it by any means, but it's just like, I think that from a commissioner standpoint, like Adam Silver has it's like, it's almost weird saying this, because like, I think I saw Chris Rock quote a couple weeks ago. It's like humanity isn't progress. Like we should just all like humanity should just be normalized. You know what I mean? Like it's just be a very regular thing that's just expected of people. But it's like Adam Silver, Adam Silver's been like, this isn't a referendum on the other commissioners that came before Adam Silver, but the amount of communication and the amount of autonomy that he's allowed like to his players to have, it's just like it's been a blessing that we're finally getting to see that, you know.
Harford, yeah, that's such a great point about Adam Silver. Remember the beginning of the year, he did the free Hong Kong to the bubble at the end. Like, what an insane year for Adam Silver.
Yeah. I mean, you're managing a lot. You're like, okay, how do we be marketable? How do we brand ourselves? Okay, how do we still, how do we still maintain integrity? But how do we still, okay, what are the players who are representing our brand of basketball? What do they care about, et cetera, et cetera? It's just a lot, and yeah, it's just like I guess the because you're talking about like, especially in the WNBA, which is not talked about too much entirely, but there's a lot of the women who decided not to come back and play. And maybe this is getting to a different topic altogether, but a lot of the women who decided not to come back and play, I mean, obviously the contracts are a lot smaller in women's basketball, and so you had a lot of, I feel like there were a lot of tough choices that had to be made during this time, and so the story that I'd read, or that Kyrie like matching the WNBA player's salary, I love that. I don't know, that just like I don't know, you just love to see good actions like that, because it's just it's an unparalleled time and it's unprecedented, and we're all like these we love to watch everybody, we love to watch all these cats go out and play basketball, but like at the end of the day, some of them are playing basketball, put food on the table, and it's just hopefully we see more of that going forward, like COVID or not.
No, there were a lot of great financial gestures. That was a huge one by Kyrie Irving. That was done in more recent months, Mike. That was to be commended, regardless of how you feel about some of the things that Kyrie has said and done, especially over recent years. That's certainly an action that's to be commended, and something that you would hope to see continue in the future here. I can think of guys like Joel Embiid and Zion Williamson back when COVID really hit a lot of these teams, and naturally they couldn't have people coming in to work their normal office jobs or their ticket jobs, and there were so many different layoffs that were even happening within these teams, that some of these players were coming out and say, you know what, even if the owner or the ownership groups aren't going to pay these people's weekly checks, you know what, I want to come out and do that. And that those are also actions to be commended. And it just goes to show that there are good people that play in these leagues, whether it's the NBA, whether it's the WNBA. There are good players, there are good people, there are good team organizers, there are good ownership groups who have people first and foremost at the top of the ledger to be taken care of, and all of their actions are to be commended. I couldn't be happier with where the league is going right now from a social standpoint, from a visibility standpoint. I think what Adam Silver's done to navigate the NBA is truly impressive stuff, and I'm glad that we were able to have that conversation, because it's important to not just focus on the X's and O's, but to focus on everything else going around the sport, because it is a sport that's rooted in normal daily life, and it's something that at the end of the day we can all be fans, we can all be a part of it, but there's other things to focus on that affect us a lot more in terms of hours of the day than the game of basketball. So guys, I just want to say I'm very thankful to have the both of you in my life as I embark on this journey of creating a platform that can hopefully educate others on the nuances of scouting and player development. I love the game of basketball with all of my heart, and I hope to be doing this and working in the sport for a very long time. And I certainly want to have both of you back on in the near future so we can continue to have conversations like we had today from start to finish, because that's what it's all about, doing it for the love of the game. So I thank the both of you for coming on the show today and helping to grow the platform of Draft Deeper. Guys, did you have any other thoughts before we close out here?
I'll let you go ahead, Scott.
I'm just incredibly proud of you, Nate. And Kevin, this is like incredible endeavor, and I think you guys are doing a great job. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited, man, just to kind of see how everything takes off. So, man, I got love for everyone, on this, and definitely looking forward to catching up with you guys soon.
Absolutely appreciate the love, brother. Harford.
Yeah, I got love for y'all too, man. I truly do. We might not always the three of us. We might not always keep in touch and whatever, but having us on for this podcast and talking about having us bond over basketball and the social issues and stuff like that, man. Like I use the example of our friendship, the three of us, because I know we have such different views on a lot of things. I use our friendship as an example, and I feel like that is that's symbolic of this podcast, and it's symbolic of a much larger conversation of the fact that we can exist while holding such different viewpoints and whatnot. So like I speak highly of y'all whenever whenever I walk out of my apartment, and I I hold that heavy in my heart. So I just I'm thankful. I thank you, Nate, for having us on, for giving us the opportunity to do this. It's special. It will never be taken for granted.
Always. Kevin, on a lighter note, do you have any hot takes that we need to get off our chests? You usually have something at the end of the podcast.
Lonzo Ball is better than Paul George.
All right. Well, now we know that we've gone off the rails, and now we need to wrap it up. So, to the listeners, you can also show your support doing the same thing by subscribing to the show wherever you get your podcasts, be it Apple, Spotify, YouTube. Like our Facebook page, follow us on Twitter at DraftDeeper for daily thoughts and musings regarding basketball as a whole. I thank all of you for tuning in. As always, have a great week, everyone.